Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you guys doing today?
I'm
I'm doing
okay. How are
fantastic.
you?
Good. I'm still kicking, so I'm grateful.
I'm alive.
Oh,
Today, we're going to be having the second part of our conversation about the election. I know that it has been quite a long time. There have been a lot of difficulties, but I think it's actually better because now we can kind of talk about it with some of the emotion removed. And we're actually joined by Winthrop student studying political science and English and former political columnist for the Johnsonian, Eli Lyons. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
hi.
Hey.
It's nice to speak with you guys.
So, in the last episode, we sort of looked at British politics and whether the Brexit referendum and things like that and the growth of far-right nationalism helped promote and inspire Trump to grow and for Trumpism to take hold in America. And then we started looking at the primary process, and now we've realised that there is a lot for us to get through in this episode. A lot has happened in the last few months since the election, so I'm just going to shorten it down for you guys so we can get up to where we want to be. So obviously Joe Biden won the nomination. He and Trump debated several times. It was quite intense. There was a lot of funny quotes from it, and then
There was a fly and the vice president
Yeah.
one. Star of the
Yeah.
show.
That literally feels like 2 years ago.
There was a fly on Hillary Clinton's head, though. Maybe the fly determines who's going to lose.
It can
Mm.
smell corruption.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. Pence is crazy. But anyway,
He is, but not as crazy as Trump. But we move.
not as crazy as Trump, for sure.
Yeah, we move. So we get to the election. Obviously, the counting process drags on for absolute yonks for days and days.
Which was to be expected.
Yeah, especially with all the mail-in votes.
I definitely went to bed the night of crying because I was like, no, I can't do this for another 4 years because I got
Same.
worried.
I really thought that we were going to lose.
Yeah.
Joey and Val, I remember us sitting on Skype and being like, "Oh my god, is this it? Again?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was
Crazy.
snapping Eli the whole night. It started with us being like, yes, and by the end we were like, well, you just
Over.
turned on positions to pretend like it was not happening.
That is so true. I definitely did that.
So yeah, and then obviously forward 2 months, exactly 2 months after the election, a bunch of pro-Trump rioters stormed the Capitol for some reason.
Well, to be fair, they had been in a cult. Or they had been convinced that
Yeah.
the government was filled with a pedophile ring and that these people were all going to be arrested and thrown in Guantanamo Bay. I mean, a lot of them still believe that's going to happen. To them,
Pizzagate and
to
QAnon
them, it
and
was
all that
a
stuff.
reason.
Yeah, QAnon is a crazy thing.
Mm.
And 4chan's a stuff place, man. So
So then obviously after that crazy day, Biden got inaugurated, thank God, on the 20th. Then we had Trump's second impeachment hearing, which I think was rightfully deserved, although he was acquitted, unfortunately, because people don't want to go against the Trump cult, obviously. And
Okay, but
And
the
because
majority
authoritarian.
did want to go against him.
Yeah.
yeah,
The
Yeah,
majority
but
did go
I'll say,
against him.
we have
did
this
have
weird.
two-thirds.
definitely a majority, but it doesn't matter because it's written down in our constitution. It has to be 2/3.
Right.
Which is so insane because we always are very polarized. We're always going to have 40-something% of one party and 50-something of the other one. That's just always how it's going to be.
I definitely think that 2/3 is probably a good idea because I would hate for this to happen when they're we have one of our people in power, like Biden, and then them figure out a fucked up reason and then somehow they impeach him.
Yeah,
So.
I was gonna say thank you, Val, for saying that because we haven't actually always been as polarized as we are right now, and the 2/3 majority is kind of a safeguard for the swinging pendulum of American politics. I think it's a good idea, I guess, but it does hinder us from being an actually majoritarian government. We just have these weird bars to clear, and in this situation, it backfired on us, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, I am glad it's in place because I would hate for us to just start impeaching willy-nilly out of nowhere. This one's a serious reason. I do think that he should have been convicted, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's a good idea to make it just simple majority.
In this situation, it's not necessarily the system's fault. I really am mainly just upset that more, Republicans didn't take him down. I mean, if anyone is going to be impeached for anything, I feel like this is it. Like starting an insurrection right at the end, trying to cause a coup. Like I feel like this is really it. I mean, obviously, I thought that meddling in the election and trying to get Ukraine to help him win was a very impeachable offense. But I mean, compared to this, that was nothing.
Mhm.
I'm also just shocked because, especially for Republicans who are looking to run in 2024, I don't know why they would not jump at the chance to stop him from being able to run again.
Republican senators who did like vote to convict, they're not up for re-election for years. I think one of them isn't up until 2026, I want to say, or 2024, something like that. Or they're retiring, actually. That was another thing. They're either not up for re-election for a long time or they're retiring. So they felt like they could vote with their conscience against party lines. And all the other ones were like, actually, I'm a bit scared because I don't want to lose my Senate seat to a bunch of Trumpies in 2022.
And this is why we need term limits.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, we've already seen some of what dissent can get you in the Republican Party. I mean, they almost tried to oust Liz Cheney, who is, the daughter of our former Vice President Dick Cheney, a very, very, very conservative woman, and yet they wanted to push her out of her leadership roles. And at the same time, we're going through this whole scandal with Marjorie Taylor Greene and her extremely conservative beliefs. And
Not conservative. Okay, I don't think. See, conservatism isn't even the problem.
You're right.
Like, I want these people to be conservative. I just don't want them to be batshit crazy.
It's
Like,
far,
yeah,
it's
it's
far right,
extremist.
like it's extremist far right views.
Extremist.
Yeah, and the way it worked out, it was almost as though Marjorie Taylor Greene had way more support from her party than Liz Cheney did, and I think that's a scary indicator for where the party is heading in the future.
yeah, it's scary for them, but you know what? I'm happy. I'm watching this. I'm like, you know what? Keep fighting. You'll never win again. Well, because Democrats, as much as we disagree and as much as like I do think there will be a shift in the party, I do not see a situation in which I will ever like not vote for a Democrat over a Republican because of my rights. Like I think we're much better at coalescing than they are. And honestly, they can fight forever. We'll always win.
I don't know. We've always had some fractions in the Republican and Democrat Party. I think that we are more together right now because we are unified in the fight against Trump. But I feel like in the future we are going to fracture just like we have in the past.
Especially with people like AOC and those kind of like more sort of progressive kind of people wanting to bring that into the Democratic Party, and then you've got the more sort of conventional center kind of capitalist loving people like Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi and those kind of things wanting to keep it how it has been.
Yeah, but I don't see the progressives breaking completely. Like I just don't see that happening.
I don't really picture the Republicans breaking completely.
I do. I mean, I think Trump Republicans are genuinely ready to break from the party. One, never vote again, or two, just even start their own party. I mean,
I think that Trump is going to feel very alienated from the Republican Party at the minute.
Trump is the Republican Party.
He's the voter base's Republican Party, but the problem is that he doesn't have any power anymore, and there's a difference between Republican representatives and Republican voters. So, like, I think there is a large swath of voters that are still attached to Trump, but I think that the party has to go on without him, and they make their own decisions. And I honestly think that they're going to coalesce together, and I don't think they'll have much trouble splitting up and having dissections in the party.
Well, that's what I was gonna mention. Like Mitch McConnell, he voted against convicting him, but then he said afterwards that like he did incite the insurrection. He just didn't think it was constitutionally right to vote to convict him because he's not in office anymore.
That's such a weird, stupid situation. Like, okay, so you're gonna give the president or a pass last month so they could do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, we're saying a precedent that you can pitch a fit whenever you've lost and do whatever you want because you can't get impeached. Like that's what we have.
Because it's the last month, we can't do anything. Like that's ridiculous. I forget who it was. I feel really dumb, but there was a past president who basically said that I should be able to be held accountable to my actions as president for the rest of my life, basically.
I want to say that was John Adams, but I feel like I'm wrong in that. So maybe look it up
And
later.
that's not a direct quote, by the way.
No,
That's just the meaning behind it. Yeah.
Sorry, John Adams.
But yeah, so I think because of that, and like obviously the Senate Minority Leader going against him and stuff, he might want to form his own party, which is some theories that I have actually seen online that he might want to if he does go for re-election, and that would be good for Democrats because it would split the party right up and
Yeah,
split the voter base in half.
Exactly. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, they call it the Patriot Party as the like idea for it, and there's been some reporting on it, and there's been some polling on it, and it seems like among the voter base there would be significant support of people who would want to like split off from the Republican Party. But I honestly do think that Trump is lazy, and I don't see him having the willpower to start his own political party, and I also think that people close to him would know enough to know that that would only cause division among Republicans. Like it wouldn't result in their power, it would result in Democratic control.
Yeah, but I don't think that Trump thinks that way. I don't think he cares the implications that his actions have on anyone else other than himself. I think in a way he hates the Republican Party more than he even does Democrats. I think that he feels as though they've done him wrong. I think he's upset that they didn't support him and call this all a rigged election. I think he cares more about them losing than anyone winning.
Mm-hmm.
I do think he's self-centered. I do think that he's a racist. I do think he's a misogynist, but I don't think he's a dumbass. I think he knows what I think he would understand that if he splits up the Republican Party, then the Democrats win.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that he would realize that if he wouldn't be able to get power, even if he did cause the Republicans to lose, like it's not like he would win, and I think he would know that and not try to go that direction. If he wants to win again and he really wants power, he'd do it on the Republican ticket.
But
Yeah.
see, I'm kind of the mind that he would do that just so he could spite the Republicans after the way he's
Exactly.
treated them. That's like because I feel like at the end of the day, Trump cares about Trump and nobody else.
I do think the Republican Party have, for the most part, been behind him, though. There's a lot of people that aren't, but there's a good majority. That's why he didn't get convicted. There's a good majority that he has in his pocket. So,
Well,
I don't
Yeah,
know.
like during his second impeachment trial, you had people like Ted Cruz, whilst
Mhm.
like the Senate was on, I don't know if it was in recess or whatever you guys call it. They
Mhm.
went into Trump's attorney's office
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
Capitol, which is totally not normal.
Our Senator Lindsey Graham also did that from South
That was it,
Carolina.
Yeah, there's a couple of them, and I don't understand how that's legal. It's like if you were the jury members and you were going inside one of the lawyers' rooms for the break. Like, that's ridiculous. I don't understand how that is legal.
Well, so it wouldn't work. It would be illegal in an actual court of law. The difference between impeachment is that it's not a proceeding of law. You know, it's literally a political dispute. You know, it's a constitutional dispute. And that's why the impeachment isn't even moored by traditional ideas of law. Like they talk about the charges as if like through the lens of law, but they're not trying to make a legal argument. They don't have to hold up to certain standards of like intent and like the actual definition of incitement of violence and stuff like that. They basically make it up as they go along. And so, you know, it seems really wrong and norm breaking, but I don't know that there's really any protections against it in the Constitution. You know?
Well, I mean, even the fact that they can choose to not even hear the argument. Like, they can just choose to be like, no, I don't want to hear it.
That's the other thing that's interesting to me is that this gave Republicans the opportunity to make that constitutional argument when the Senate had already decided that the trial was constitutional. Like, right? So, like, in a court of law, if something is constitutional, you can't just like appeal and say, "Oh, well, I don't think it's constitutional." It's like we already ruled it's constitutional, but that's not it's not the same in the impeachment, which is so weird to me.
Yeah. I find it really strange that we have a hearing in the House, and then when it goes to the Senate completely gets to decide the terms of how it's heard,
Mm-hmm.
how they go about it, how the trials go. Like, that's very strange to me. I find it weird that we don't have a more structured way of handling impeachment.
It's like one of the shortest sections in the Constitution. It's literally just a couple of sentences, basically.
If I find it strange that impeachment is not a larger part of the Constitution because it's one of the only things that keeps us a democracy.
So I think the idea of that, like the reason the language is so broad, is because the founders really wanted to make sure that it could be an all-encompassing process, and so they left it as open as possible and gave all the power to Congress so that they could decide what it meant in the moment, right? Because there was no way that they could foresee every high crime and misdemeanor that a president could commit, right? So they left it as open as possible so that we would use it appropriately. Now, because of our polarized society, it's broken. The system, it just doesn't work in the way that they intended it to work, because there are no precedents for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, think
Yeah.
about it. Like, whenever they first came up with the idea of impeachment, what were even the impeachable offenses? Like, what was? I'm
I
trying to
think
think. It must have been like war treason.
It was
I mean,
mostly treason, I think, is what the original idea was.
yeah, there are just so many parts of our government, that don't work because it was created whenever people were traveling on horses. Like, there, when you look at the Electoral College and the argument around that, it's strange to me that we haven't updated the way that our government works.
Unfortunately, it's hard to update it because we have such a polarized system, and I think you need that. It's not just simple majority, unfortunately. So
when Val mentioned earlier about the idea of that, that you don't think that Trump is dumb and you think that he makes these decisions purposefully, I think that has been a big dispute over the last 4 years among the media. Although I do feel as though they pick and choose what narrative they want to spin. I want to ask you guys your opinion looking back over all of this. Do you think Trump was a bumbling buffoon or an evil mastermind? Because I don't necessarily think he can be both.
I feel like that's a very polarized answer here.
Well, it's going to be nuanced, but I want to know your opinion.
Well, I don't think he's a genius, but I don't think that he's a bumbling buffoon. I think he's competent, but he is competently evil, I guess. I don't know. I feel like he definitely isn't as dumb as people make him out to be. If he was dumb, he wouldn't be able to rally a fan I almost said fan base. I don't know how to describe them. I don't think they're a fan base. A cult,
a coalition.
I guess. Coalition in order to get him pretty much almost reelected. He basically had a lot of power in that way, and I don't think he would be able to rally and say the things that he did that got them to rally if he was a complete dumbass. He knew what he was doing. I don't think he's a genius because obviously he didn't win. He didn't get those last couple votes. But I also think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the Democratic Party started rallying around the idea of like, we need to get him out of here. So I don't know. I feel like there is a in between here. He's not a genius, but he's not a bumbling idiot either.
Yeah, I guess I just feel like with that point about the fact that he almost got elected, I kind of feel like with the situation that he was given with coronavirus and with the country being so polarized and the fact that Joe Biden wasn't necessarily the strongest candidate in the world, I think if he had put any thought into his campaign, I think he could have won. Like, I think he could have won in a landslide. I mean, but also just the idea that if he had even attempted to calm everyone down with the coronavirus and ensure that everyone wears masks, I think he really could have won this easily.
I do think so too. I was going to say that I think he's a completely incompetent leader, but he's a very, very, very talented speaker, and not in the sense where he's like a good talker, but he is a demagogue. He knows how to manipulate his audience and stuff, and he is in a sense also very smart politically, right? Like, if you'll remember in 2016 he ran on like a largely like anti-immigration platform and stuff, and build the wall, like all that kind of stuff, and that brought a lot of people on to his side and stuff.
But do you think that was calculated, or do you think that was just his hatred coming out?
Well, no. So I do think it was all hatred, right? But what I mean to say is that like later on when he actually started implementing those policies and like beefing up border security, and we went through the whole kids in cages thing, like if you'll notice, like he did not talk about immigration in really the last year of his term at the very least, right? Like he did not try to run on that again. Like he was like, that was wrong. And it got me in trouble, and so I'm going to stay away from it.
Well, he didn't run on anything that he ran on the first time. I mean, the first time he was this fake populist character, pretending as though he truly cared about the interests of the poor of this country, the working class of this country. He acted as though he was going to, quote unquote, drain the swamp, and he was
Yeah.
going to root out corruption, all of this stuff. And all of that has been thrown out the window. And it's really hard to see, you know, that, because I think as a Bernie supporter, I think it worries me that America will never want to embrace someone with those ideas that's not lying about it, you
Yeah.
know?
He's the dog whistler in chief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but something that he did do, which surprised me, I guess, is that he did get a lot of the Hispanic vote toward, like from the
Mhm.
last year. Like he was able to rally the idea that like I think it was mostly around the idea like, oh, you guys came here legally, so we don't want to
Oh,
bring
yeah.
in more people that are doing this
Yeah.
illegally and that kind of stuff. And he rallied a lot of the Hispanic vote. I think it was almost 50-50, especially in Florida.
Oh
Well, yeah,
yeah.
well, that's the thing, is in Florida, it was very easy to do that because of what had happened in Cuba and what had happened with Castro. It's very easy to call socialism on any kind
Yeah,
of
that
democratic
too.
policy.
So
I think it's the same reason why poor conservative people still support conservatives telling them there's no money. They still support, being against handouts, because of the idea that they feel as though, if I did it, anyone can. But that's not, they were in a series of situations that led them here. And so it's really insane to believe that what you did everyone else should be able to do. But I think it's the same idea. Is like, I was able to come here legally, so everyone else can, and I had to work this hard, so everyone else should have to work this hard.
Mhm.
well, it's the same idea when it comes to like education. Like a lot of people are like, well, I paid off my student loans, so everyone else should be made to too. So
Yeah.
that
Without bearing in mind how much student loans have increased and tuition has
I
increased.
know.
And, yeah.
And how the minimum wage has not.
Yeah.
I think he is very meticulous and evil. Because if you look back in the 70s, I think it was the 70s or the 80s, maybe the 90s, God knows. He
At some point within the
at
last
some
half a
point in the
century.
last 30 years, at some point in the last 34 years.
50. It's weird because sometimes when I count back with like 90s and 80s, I do think it's 10 or 20 years, but we are in 2021.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
last
So
50
yeah,
years.
at some point in the last few decades, I swear he tried, when he was a landlord, he either tried to evict people of color from his complex, or he tried to stop them from being able to rent a property within his place, and he actually got in trouble for it, obviously because it was illegal. So I think he's always had some sort of horrible, like, fascist kind of
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's any question of whether there is ill intent there and whether there's actually something really evil there. It's just the idea of whether he has done all of these things. He's tried to appear as though he's a people person. He's tried to, like, he said all of these awful things to directly target people, or if he's just running around willy-nilly.
I don't think he cares about his base at all.
Oh, well, yeah, no. He thinks they're all dumb.
Yeah, and the things he says about people, I think, like the mean stuff is obviously his own opinion.
Mhm.
But then the nice things he says, I think he just says it to be nice. And he's like, I love my supporters, blah, 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 blah. And that stupid picture that is going around of him hugging the American flag, like,
Mhm.
like he does not care one bit. If he
No.
was convicted here and the police were after him, he'd probably try and find sanctuary in somewhere like, I don't know, North Korea with his best pal Kim Jong.
Yeah, he would fake his death.
Yeah.
Because that's what people do in this country. Well,
So he knows what he's doing, and he tries to make himself come across as a people person, but he's not. It's like how he played on the veteran vote in 2016, and then he tried it again this year, and then that leaked thing came out where he called them losers.
Yeah.
When I swear he's dodged the draft like 4 times.
But that's so crazy because he still got most of the veteran vote. So
I know.
Yeah.
How, for Val and Eli and Mitch looking in, how has the last 4 years affected your view of the world? Like, where do we go from here, in the sense that, like, I assume all of us were kind of naive because of having Obama. I remember seeing him be inaugurated when I was in elementary school. We watched that, and then I had that building my entire view of the world on the idea that, oh, it's, it's like Hairspray. Welcome to the 60s. Like it really felt like, okay, the world is great. We're all accepting of everyone. There's a black president. I can be gay and married now. Like has
That
this
didn't happen until way
period.
later, but yes.
2015.
We
Yeah.
should just note that Obama didn't support gay marriage when he got elected.
Yeah, neither did Joe Biden.
Joe Biden did first, though, to be fair.
Yeah, but they both didn't. I've seen videos of them saying in the vice presidential and the presidential debate that they didn't support it.
Yeah, no, most of the political figures today had very different views. I mean, I think a lot of these people just, they grew with us. I mean, not us, we were young, but like they grew with the public.
If you look at the history of Joe Biden, he's always been somebody who is kind of a populist in the sense that he doesn't have like a strict ideology. He sort of feels out where the voting base is and kind of goes with that. Like, and he's always been a candidate who did that. And so he's changed on a lot of different issues.
Yeah, most of them are like that.
What's that?
I mean, that they evolve based on what their base wants. The reason why I loved Bernie was the fact that like he didn't care. Like the last, he's just fought for the same thing the whole time, and I think there's a hunger for that. But then again, there's a downside that he didn't really. Well, no, I'm not going to feed into that he didn't accomplish much because he actually has been behind a lot of these bills. His name just isn't on them. I mean, it's okay if this just isn't a question that resonates with you guys. We can move on. But I mean, do you have any reflections as far as like what Trump means going forward? Like what this means for our country? I mean, obviously, we did have the first black president, and it sent a message to everyone else that hey, America is trying to reform what they've done, and they're trying to be the leaders in diversity and inclusion. But then we did have we had the first black president and then the most like racist president like in modern history. It is definitely a referendum on that, and I think it definitely sent the message to the rest of the world.
I definitely think a lot of the nastiness of politics came out in the last 4 years. Like
Yeah.
the pure like hatred on both sides in a way. I mean, I more see it from the Republican side, but that's because I'm a Democrat. But I definitely think that people became very venomous during this election cycle.
Well, they
So
were finally allowed to. I think it was there. They were just told to be civil before.
I think Trump brought that out in people, yeah.
Yeah, because like Bush obviously probably held a lot of these opinions, but it was like microaggressions, and it was like
Yeah.
see that affected them, but they weren't allowed to say the quiet part out loud, whereas Trump told them
right.
they
I
could.
mean, you had in the 2008 election, you had at this Republican convention, you had this woman trash talking Obama, and John McCain was like, no, we treat him with respect, and like you don't have that. You didn't have that in
But
this
now they hate
election.
John McCain is disgraced, and Trump talks bad about him even though he's deceased.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, I will just say that under Obama, the world respected America and respected America's leadership. And I think that we've lost that entirely. I mean, I think that governments don't trust us anymore.
With Trump on the world stage, you made a laughing stock of yourselves, and it's going to be very hard to come back from that, especially when it seems that you guys seem to flip between the two parties at least every like 2 election cycles. It's hard for you guys to have consistency when you jump from Obama, who, along with all the other previous presidents, was mainly focused on like maintaining the US's image and reputation and stuff,
and encouraging democracy abroad as well.
Yeah,
That was
Yeah.
a big project of his. And
Yeah.
we've just
And it was only he did come into office only 7 years after 9/11.
right.
He still was having to deal with that, and I mean he took out Osama bin Laden. So I mean he had to handle that.
I just think about democracy and the legacy of democracy a lot, and what it seems to me is that we have been this power that encouraged democracy across the world, and now we've been left after Trump with a party that believes in democracy and believes in the power of the vote, and a party that is entirely inherently undemocratic and believes in the systematic oppression of people's votes, especially racial minorities' votes. And it makes me worried because in the absence of America as a leading democracy, we've seen countless governments slip under authoritarian rulers in the past 4 years alone. And I do think that Trump had a hand in that and influencing the conduct of some of our big, powerful authoritarian leaders right now.
What really upset me is that like Trump seemed to be in open arms with like North Korea and Russia, and I was
Right.
That really got me fuming because, like, we should not be.
Fuming?
What?
Bloody fuming!
I didn't say bloody fuming.
No, but you just said fuming, and it's such a Britishism that it made me giggle.
Oh, well.
I'm torn on that because obviously I think the problem was that Trump embraced the authoritarian leaders and didn't care about the actual democratic ones. You know, I do
Exactly.
think it's important to try and keep some level of relationship with these people so that they don't hate us and kill us. Like, they do have a lot of power. And while I do think that we have the strongest military, I do think someone like Kim Jong-un doesn't care, and I think he could just, you know, blow everything up. Like, I do think
Yeah.
it's important to not, you know, I thought it was dangerous what Biden was saying, where he was like, we need to denounce our enemies and embrace our friends. It's like, well, maybe we need to try and make them think we're friends with them so that they don't kill us.
Biden is an international buff. He's going to want to return to Obama era geopolitics at the very least. And he's going to want to take stances on things and make clear the United States' stands on things that are going on around the world as a way of kind of like rebuilding that reputation. And I just worry that I don't think we have the same sway as we used to. And or maybe we shouldn't at all. Maybe, I don't know, maybe this is better somehow.
I don't think it helps when Trump was calling different world leaders different horrible names. Like,
Yeah.
he called, it came out recently that a couple of years ago at one of the world summits, he called Theresa May and Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, some name. I can't remember what it was, but like, it's just not. It completely
It's not
ruins.
professional.
It's not professional, and it completely ruins the foundations that their predecessors had built for many, many decades.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that it hasn't been that long since the Cold War, and more importantly, World War II. Like, I think people forget that, like, war could happen at any moment. Like, obviously, we have nuclear weaponry, so if we do have war, like, it would be dumb. It would be
Well, it'd
completely
be
dumb for
over
many
before it
people.
even begun. We'd all
It would
die.
be over. But I do think people forget that, like, we really are treading on thin ice with everyone.
Although I would say that I think we're more likely to get into a war with Iran than Russia or China
Yeah.
soon, anytime
I
soon, or
think
even North Korea.
Russia and China are too much of a military power for people to even try it with them, which is why they're getting
Yeah.
away with a lot of what they're doing.
Mhm.
Like
I just don't
they,
think that we should be buddy with them. Like, I don't
No.
think we should be
No.
buddy.
I think we should have economic sanctions. I think especially the UK should sanction Russia a hell of a lot more than what they're doing right now. But I don't think
I
the current leadership want to do much of that, because there are a lot of Russian oligarchs who have financial interests in companies and things in the UK, so they don't want to affect these British companies. But like, the Russian government poisoned a former spy on British soil with
Yeah, I heard about that. That's
with
crazy.
a chemical weapon that ended up killing a member of the public and sending another one to hospital. And that was only a year or two ago. Like, that sounds like something that would happen in in the Second World War.
like during the yeah.
So I'm going to ask this. I want everyone to answer 2 questions concisely. I think it's really interesting and really important of a conversation that everyone needs to have that I don't think we're addressing, and I assume that people have very different views on. I want to know why you think we got Trump, and we won't argue about it. We'll just give it. Why you think we got Trump and where we go from here.
I think you guys got Trump because there were a lot of voters who felt alienated by the state of the political parties. They felt there was a lot of elite members, and I think disinformation on social media also helped play a part in that. And Trump preyed on those vulnerable people who felt disillusioned by politics and manipulated them and radicalized some of them as well. And where we go from here, I do not know. I hope that Biden can build some sort of unity like he has been trying to do, and return politics to a sense of more sort of normality in a way, and less radicalization of those who feel polarized.
Val?
I think that a lot of the reason why we got Trump in the first place is, unfortunately, when we had that election, we I personally love Hillary Clinton, but I think that Hillary Clinton being there caused a lot of the moderates to go towards Trump versus going towards Hillary because of some of the issues that were going on, such as the email scandals and general genuine illusion that a woman could not be a president. So I feel like that is a big reason why a lot of the moderate votes turned to Trump's side. And then on top of that, when the moderate votes and the radicalized votes went towards Trump, a lot of people started buying into what he was saying, because they, of the platform being about the idea that immigrants can, come into our country and take our jobs, and that America's not great. Just the rhetoric that he used, caused a lot of people to just buy into what he said and start ignoring all the other, information that is out there. They started buying into fake news and all that kind of stuff. And where we go from here, I just think that we need to have somebody who focuses on facts, focuses on helping, the middle class, especially, and focus on, and lower class as well. That's not the right word. Working class. There we go. So that we can, build our country again. And because right now I feel like, we have been in shambles for the last 3 or 4 years.
I think that we got Trump because I think there was a very elitist air around everyone who was running things. We I think we got Trump because we had Clinton, and then we had Obama, who could basically continued a lot of the legacy of Clinton, and then we tried to elect another Clinton. I think it is important to acknowledge that Hillary Clinton is one of the main reasons why we got Trump, was the fact that everyone had already voiced that they didn't like her. I mean, and then we still managed to run her. And obviously sexism definitely did play a part in it. It's hard to ignore that. But I also think that we had lost trust in the people running things because it had become very apparent that they were creating a lot of economic policy that benefited them and did not necessarily benefit the working class of this country. And I think it was very easy to manipulate people into believing that Trump was actually going to fix it. I think it was very easy to prey on people's economic anxieties and convince them that the other poor people were the reason why they were poor. And I think that because of that, it's very important going forward to elect officials who have everything out in the air, that clearly have supported the same things their entire life. It's important. I think it's super important that we completely grassroots fund going forward to prove that there is not corruption as far as lobbyists go. I think we need to create more policy that, creates term limits for a lot of these people, that requires that they cannot go and consult for corporations. I just think it's very important that we root out the corruption that does exist so that someone like Trump cannot come in and lie to the people that they're actually going to fix it. I really do think that we need to elect a good Trump. We need to elect someone that's fine for the people and who's not afraid to throw the punches. I think for so long, since the Clinton era, moderates have been convinced that the only way to win is to pander to the right and to not actually fight for what they believe in. And I think it's important that we basically just cater everything that we do to the working class people. And to also not be so elite about it. I think there's definitely an air around, like, the working class don't know anything, so we need to do what's best for them. Yeah. So Eli?
Okay, so I think there are a lot of reasons that we got Trump, but I'm going to argue on the democracy reform side. So basically what we saw is when Obama was elected, he came into office and he didn't really have much congressional experience before that. He was kind of like a rising star and then immediately got elected. And so like Joey talks about a lot of the people that were staffing him was Clinton era people. And so they went into power having unified government for the first 2 years, and Republicans didn't really have a mounted opposition at that point, and they decided they were just going to obstruct. And so by the 2010 midterms, the Republicans had taken control again. And so Obama, because he had misstepped and assumed that he could make deals with the Republicans, actually wasn't able to accomplish anything at all. And I think that caused a lot of the disillusionment within the Democratic Party, because we had a Democratic president for so long and didn't see a difference in our lives. and that leading up to the 2016 election let people, just sit on the sidelines and think, oh, well, she's bound to win because the media is telling us she's going to win, and then she didn't. And I fear, and this is kind of going into where I think we go from here, I fear that if we don't change the imbalance in our system and the fact that there is our white rural populations are way overrepresented in our government, I think we need to abolish the filibuster so that we can start passing legislation with just a majority vote and not have to pass this like 60 vote threshold that we're never going to get Republicans on our side for. I think if we want to make any progress, actually delivering healthcare to people, actually delivering COVID relief, actually delivering comprehensive education reform, like that's the next step, is abolishing the filibuster. And I hope that Joe Biden can come around and see that.
All right. Well, I mean, I think it's definitely a combination of all of those things. And there's a lot to do going forward. I would love to have another conversation completely based on looking forward, and looking forward on what we want to do and the policies we want to implement. All right. There's still a lot to talk about. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up for now, and we will see you guys next time, right?
Right.
Yes.
I can't wait to talk more.
All right. Well, we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube and iTunes.